I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of the Anchorage Assembly, beginning with a roll call.
Ms. Drummond.
Here.
Mr. Trainee.
Here.
Mr. Honeman.
Here.
Ms. Gray-Jackson.
Honored to be here.
Ms. Osiander.
Here.
Mr. Hall.
Here.
Mr. Starr.
Here.
Mr. Trombley.
Here.
Ms. Johnston.
Here.
Mr. Flynn. And Mr. Birch.
Here.
Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Boy, it's nice to see everybody here. At this point, I'd like to have a pledge. Mr. Trombley, would you lead us? The first item on our agenda are the minutes of the regular meeting of August 16th.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Is there any objection to approval? Hearing and seeing none, those minutes are accepted as presented. Mr. Mayor, do you have a report for us this evening?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Spent some time this afternoon, as did Assemblymember Johnston, with Secretary of the Department of Transportation, Ray LaHood. Had an opportunity to meet with himself, Senator Begich, Congressman Young, and Senator Johnny Ellis, and others, the Governor Sheffield, and really give a very good briefing to the Secretary on the progress of the port, some of the steps and measures we've taken to get that project back on track, and a very engaging meeting. He asked a lot of great questions, and then we took a tour of the port and the construction area, and I think the Secretary came away with a great new understanding of how vital this port is, not only to Anchorage but to all of Alaska, and indeed to the world, as due to its strategic military designation and the fact that it supplies so much to the cargo airport, which is, we know, is the 5th busiest cargo airport in the world. So it helps our balance of trade, which is something, that most people don't think about with the port. So a great meeting. And then in other news, we've just been named again one of the 100 best communities for youth for the 6th consecutive year. It puts us into very rarefied air to be one of those communities for 6 consecutive years. There's very few of them. So we're honored by that designation as well. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Do you have any update on the police officer that was hurt in the accident, Mr. Mayor? I just saw the chief walk in, but I didn't know if...
I think the chief could probably give a better update.
Chief, I'm sorry, you just walk in and here you get a question. Was just wondering if you could give us an update on the status of the injured police officer?
Through the chair. Officer Hughes is at Harborview Medical Center in Seattle. He underwent surgery yesterday. I think that was the second bout of surgery. They found some problems in there. I think I heard today he's probably going to have 2 more rounds of surgery later this week, probably on Thursday. I don't have any more details than that. It's hips and foot. But he's doing well under the circumstances. I mean, he's plugging along.
Thank you. If you could just keep us updated, I think we're all interested.
I will.
You, sir.
Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Mayor?
A question for the mayor, ma'am.
I'm sorry, Mr. Starr.
Mr. Mayor, has there been any updates on the plumbers and pipe fitters discussions, the resolution that we passed several weeks ago? I was hoping you could perhaps tell us any progress made there.
Sure. We have extended an offer to meet and confer, and we'll be setting a date for that here soon.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Wheeler, is that formal negotiations from our perspective then in terms of communications with the parties, or what are we bound to? Could you prime us on that?
Through the chair, Mr. Starr, the meet and confer provisions in the old contract that's currently in place, there's some conversation about whether they constitute quote-unquote formal negotiations. Our position is that they are negotiations.
Thank you. So I got an envelope here from the Plumbers and Pipe Fitters Union on my desk. I haven't opened it yet, but is there any risk or danger in that communication?
Okay. Unless there's white powder in it, sir.
I don't know. Just I wanted to ask.
Through the chair, I have no way of answering that without knowing what's in it.
Okay. I'll let you watch it. Thank you.
So, Mr. Wheeler, if you could let us know when you feel that negotiations have commenced so that all Assembly members are aware that of the limitations to our ability to discuss things freely.
Will do.
Thank you, sir. Anything else, Mr. Starr? All right. I just have a couple of items related to tonight's agenda to share. On item 11A on our agenda is a request from Rum Runners. We have received a letter from their attorney asking that this be withdrawn. Additionally, on 11B, the Enterprise Committee still wants to talk about the ML&P transition plan, so that will probably be carried over. And the last item to bring to your attention, if you recall, we've been talking for some time now about taxi cab suspensions in certain circumstances, and we basically postponed to hear from the Public Advisory Commission. My understanding is they have met, discussed it. We received an email from them, and there is an S2 version tonight that incorporates those concerns. So if you want the latest on that taxi cab issue, you want to look for the S2 version, and if there's none in the back, you can get some from our clerk here on the corner by the security. Thank you. That's really all I have. So with that, we'll go to committee reports. Ms. Drummond? Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Gray-Jackson, you had a comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item 11D, is that going to be postponed?
11D, no. My understanding is that the BAC met. Is that true, Mr. Starr? And as such, I was told that they're going to give a report tonight. And it was, if you remember, postponed to get their analysis. I haven't seen their report, but I assume we'll hear tonight.
Okay, I guess I misunderstood. I thought there was going to be an Assembly Budget and Finance Committee meeting. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Starr, do you want to respond or not?
No, other than I asked the BAC to approach this body as a whole when they had their findings. That's the message that I sent to them, so there's no Budget and Finance Committee meeting beyond this. This item in front of us came out of the committee. So, thank you.
All right. With that, Ms. Drummond, any report?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Last week, I was pleased to be present at the handover of the Coulis Air National Guard base to the Anchorage Municipal International Airport. There were many members of the Guard and of the neighbors and the businesses that are going to miss Coulis very much, but Anchorage International Airport has some interesting plans for Coulis. Look forward to that. And I also attended the ribbon cutting of the new Medic 7 unit at the Sand Lake Fire Station. Thank you.
Very good. Mr. Trainee?
Just that we received these and we're passing them out to everybody. These are cards from National League of Cities. And with one of these, every Anchorage resident can go get about 23% off on pharmaceuticals. And you can go out to the web for NLC and look at all the pharmacies that honor this, from Costco to Walgreens and back again. There's a lot of them out there. I think, Elvie, you said there's, 80 of them in the Anchorage area? 40. So I left one of these on your desk. So if you're going to buy pharmaceuticals, you're not going to use insurance, then you might want to try this. It'll save you 23%. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Honan?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. The Public Safety Committee met by request of the body on the taxi cab ordinance, and we took information, adjusted it to the S1 version, the S version. The administration took information, made an S1 version, which is what led to the S2 version after the Public Safety Advisory Commission, which was, if you recall, the last movement was at the last meeting. I was present at all the meetings, and I'm just happy to report that the most recent information was from the dispatch company, who confirmed what has been stated all along. We can't rely on taxi cab permit owners or the dispatchers not to have a cab driver who might, or a chauffeur license. I think it's a fair statement, but for the cab industry, these are contractors. They're not employees. And so you could have someone who has a permit owner that owns the cab and is actually a chauffeur driver that does all one and the three. And so it would be up to them to suspend themselves or take themselves off the road, and you could see that could be a problem. So I was happy to see that they did not object. In fact, thought it was a good ordinance. At POA, the permit owners also agreed, and ACLU, after some language inserted for due process. So we'll talk a little bit more, I'm sure, as we go into it. We have the Public Safety Committee meeting slated for October 12th. We'll be discussing the tow regulations. It's anticipated to have a draft. It will not have been introduced yet for discussion purposes by then. Also on the agenda for October 12th is fireworks, changes potentially in the fireworks ordinance. And so, again, I ask and urge the colleagues, if you have had any contact from constituents or any opinions or thoughts on what might happen, I know, Ms. Osiander, you had expressed a few concerns and maybe perhaps some ideas. I would urge you to try to get that information to me before the 12th so we can incorporate all that information and come back to the body with recommendations.
And the location of your committee meeting, so folks can...
We were trying to secure, I believe we finally did, the Permit Center training room, conference
All
room,
right.
for
Thanks,
parking
sir.
purposes, noon to 2. So it'll...
Noon to 2.
Noon to
Thank
2.
you.
On the 12th.
Ms. Gray Jackson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a follow-up on the audit that was done by the Internal Audit Department on the Police and Fire Retirement Medical. I'm going to follow up with the chair of the board because they were supposed to have some discussion and then come back to the ad hoc committee to talk about administration of the program, and I haven't heard from them in a while, so I'll be following up on that and scheduling a meeting. In addition, I'm going to pull the E911 audit for further discussion by the audit committee, and I've already talked to the administration and given them a heads up on that issue, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hall?
Yes, Madam Chair. A lot of you may have picked up on the fact that we had an awful lot of people walking around Anchorage this last week wearing Lions vest. The U.S.-Canadian Lions Forum was held here, and a bit of history. That was one of the events when we were looking at building the convention center that was held up to show this is why we need to build the convention center. And I'm very pleased to say that they had over 1,700 registered, over 2,700 people in the community for that event. I had the great pleasure of representing the mayor Thursday morning. Lions International President Tam was in Anchorage, who happens to be the owner of China Air. And his goal for the year is to plant 1 million trees, or Lions to plant 1 million trees. And we planted a beautiful one next to the Performing Arts Center on Thursday morning. And he announced at that point he's 2 months into his term, and there are over 2 million trees already that Lions have planted. I also had the pleasure of attending their closing banquet on Saturday night, which was outstanding. But I think the best part was my brother, who basically has headed this up for Lions International and done all the coordination, called me on Monday afternoon, and they had done all the wrap-ups, and he said that this forum received the highest rating of any forum that Lions International has ever put on, that it was so well handled by the Denina Center and SMG, the food was the best that they've ever been served, and that there will be an awful lot of good PR going out because of that event being held here. So the great news is we took a chance, we built a Denina Center, and the event that we were really looking at for a justification came in and paid off very well for the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Mr. Starr?
Budget and Finance, we have the budget season approaching. We should be able to see, Major, are we going to see the budget this Friday, or when do you anticipate it coming out?
On Friday.
Okay. And then shortly thereafter will be the coordinated schedule for the work sessions and the public review process of that, as well as the interaction with the BAC. So you should see a memo from both Cheryl and myself sometime later this week on that schedule.
Excellent. Mr. Trombley?
No report.
As you did mention, we are going to be addressing the MLMP transition tomorrow with the MLMP board, and it will be 11:30 at the Egan Center for the Enterprise Committee. Thank you.
Mr. Flynn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We had a AMAT's Policy Committee meeting last week. We got the draft Metropolitan Transportation Plan, which will replace the Long Range Transportation Plan. It's got a new acronym now. I'd like to read a few chapters to you. Maybe just a paragraph. The actual financial plan for the Connect Arm Crossing will not be known until after the adoption of this MTP in 2012, with the results of a successful project bidding and selection process to be carried out by CABADA. The actual financial plan for the Connect Arm Crossing requires more state investment or is required to draw from sources such as federal National Highway Systems funds that affect the implementation of other MTP projects. This MTP will have to be amended to remove roadway projects from the network, resulting in worsening congestion, or new revenue sources and assumptions will need to be brought forward. That's all, Madam Chair.
Mr. Birch?
Yeah, I would just add, as a member of the Policy Committee, as Mr. Flynn referenced, that study, in case you don't want to try to retrieve a hard copy, is available at www.amatsinfo.org. And that's actually a pretty effective and user-friendly website for those that are interested in perusing that document. It is fairly well organized. That will be out and is going to be presented for public hearing, public comment. I also attended the Board of Directors meeting, a quarterly meeting for the Anchorage Convention and Visitors Bureau, and had a lot of good news to report there regarding the summer and upcoming activities. But of significant note is that the moniker, the name of the organization, is going to be changed to Visit Anchorage, and I think it's going to be Anchorage Convention and Visitors Bureau, DBA Visit Anchorage, and they provided a fairly extensive background summary of some of the research in other communities, and there's a lot of excitement over that modification. So, thank you.
Thank you. Just as a request to our two AMATS people, if you could pass on a general request to not schedule major public input hearings on the LRTP during assembly meeting nights, it would greatly be appreciated. I've noted they did that.
MTP.
Sorry, the acronym, I'm slow. Thank you.
Point noted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, with that, the addendum and a late on the table item is before us. Is there any objection to incorporation? Hearing and seeing none, then those items are incorporated, and I'll now read them into the record. On the 9B section of our agenda, we're adding 9B3, which is AR 264, a resolution of the municipality appropriating $54,800 from the anticipated unearned program revenues from the Purchasing Department Area-Wide General Fund 101 to the Purchasing Department Fund 101 2001 operating budget for the payment of fees and expenses associated with the disposal of surplus and excess municipal property, accompanied by AM 550. Additionally, B4 would be a resolution 265. This is a resolution providing for the appropriation of a donation of $20,000 from Target Corporation to the Anchorage Public Library Miscellaneous Operations Grant for the Community Read Program 2012, accompanied by Assembly Memorandum 551. 9B5 on our agenda will be AR 266. This is a resolution of the municipality providing for the appropriation of $3,000 from the Friends of the Library donation, the Anchorage Public Library Miscellaneous Operation Grant Fund for the purchase of library youth materials, accompanied by AM 552. The late on the table item will be 9B6 on our agenda. This is AR 267. It's a resolution amending Assembly Resolution 2009-195, which authorized Municipal Light and Power to negotiate and acquire natural gas to meet its short-term requirements, notwithstanding Title VII. Then under the C section, bid awards of our agenda, there is a new item AM 542, which is a recommendation of award to Tudor Express Trucking to provide in-dump trucks with operators for snow hauling for the Municipality of Anchorage Public Works Department, Maintenance and Operations Division, $1,200,000. Under new business, under the D section of our agenda, there's D16 now, which is AM 543, confirmation of an executive appointment, Craig Woolard, General Manager, AWWU. D17 is Assembly Memorandum 544, confirmation of executive appointment for Ronald S. Haddon for our new purchasing director. And D18 is AM545. It's a proprietary purchase from Motorola Solutions Incorporated for providing radio system infrastructure and equipment to the Municipality of Anchorage Office of Emergency Management, Public Works Department, Maintenance and Operations Division, $1,592,306. D19 on our agenda will be AM548. This is a cooperative purchase award to Cal Worthington Ford to furnish 2 one-ton pickup trucks to the Municipality of Anchorage, Anchorage Fire Department for $51,400. D20 on our agenda will be AM549. This is a professional service contract with Emily Cotter to provide consulting services to the Municipality of Anchorage, Port of Anchorage for $65,000. Under information reports, there's a new E7, which is AIM 104. This is an Anchorage Water and Wastewater Utility Transition Plan update from the Finance Department. Additional items for introduction in the F section of our agenda are F15, which is AR 263. This is a resolution adopting the 2012 Housing and Community Development Annual Action Plan, which constitutes the application of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for the Community Development Block Grant, the Home Investment Partnerships Program, and the Emergency Shelter Grant. This resolution appropriates the annual entitlement grants from HUD, program income, and recaptured funds in the amount of $1,707,768 in projected CDBG entitlement and $385,000 in projected program income, with $946,309 in projected home entitlement and $75,000 in projected program income recaptured funds, and $82,511 in projected ESG entitlement to the Department of Health and Human Services, all to Federal Grant 241. Public hearing is set at our next meeting for 10/11. It's accompanied by AM 546. Additionally, there is, as mentioned previously, another version of AO91. It's the S2 version. It's that ordinance amending Anchorage Municipal Code Title 11 to add preventative and protective measures in response to criminally offensive sexual behavior by an applicant or a licensed chauffeur, prescribing rules and conditions to guide administrative action and providing for an immediate effective date, and that's accompanied by AM 553. Additionally, in the 14 section of our agenda, in 14D, there is an S version of AO93, which is an ordinance which amends Anchorage Municipal Code Section 21.40.140 and the related sections to provide for certain mixed-use development in the B1A Local and Neighborhood Business District under Alternative Development Design Approval Authority as a pilot program, and this is accompanied by AM 547. And we need a public hearing date. No, that's already on our agenda.
Oh, it's an S version.
Yeah, it's an S version. All right. So with that, the consent agenda is before us, including the addendum and incorporated items.
Move to incorporate.
Second.
Well, I think we need a motion to approve at this point.
Okay. Motion to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you very much. So with that, I will go down and see what you would like to talk about. Mr. Birch, you're first.
No items. Thank you.
Mr. Flynn,
Item 9 Alpha 2 for presentation.
9 Alpha 2. Thank you. Ms. Johnston.
No items, thank you.
Mr. Trombley.
No items.
Mr. Starr.
None.
Mr. Hall.
None.
Ms. Gray-Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. 9 Elephant 5.
Thank you.
Alpha?
Which one? E, Echo. She referred to it as elephant, but it's the same E. Mr. Honeman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. 9 Bravo 4 and 5, just for quick discussion. 9 Bravo 4 and 9 Bravo 5.
Okay, and those were both on the addendum.
Yes, correct.
4 and 5. All right. Anything else, sir? Mr. Trainee?
Nothing, ma'am.
Mr. Drummond?
No items.
All right. I'll recap to make sure. We've got 9A2, and I'm assuming then there was no presentation for 9A1? There is one? I didn't have that. No, no one pulled it. Did you? But we certainly can at this point. So let's add that one. All right, so we've got A1, A2, E5, and then on the addendum, we've got B, Bravo 4 and 5. That's all I've got.
Correct, ma'am.
Is that correct? All right. So with that, please vote on the consent agenda less the items pulled. Those pass unanimously. So I believe at this point we have appointed some folks. If you were just appointed in that mass of motions to a board or commission, we would like to meet you. If you could please come forward and introduce yourself.
Once he's done, showing this.
Madam Chair, members of the Assembly, Rick Davies, Chairman of the Municipal Veterans and Military Affairs Commission. Two of our members were reappointed, Pam Beal and Nelson, who aren't here today, but I wanted to take a moment to introduce you to two young American heroes. Neither of these people existed when I was in Vietnam. And one of the things that we've been talking about at the Commission is bringing in some young vets. As you know, in this community we have a lot of military, and we have a lot of new veterans. And as we look around the table at the Commission, a lot of us are getting pretty old and pretty gray, and we figure it's a very good idea to bring these two. We have two exceptional young man, Tim Wheeler, who's not only a local veteran leader, who's one of the passions behind the Alaska Veterans Business Alliance, but also on the National Advisory Committee for the Small Business Administration. So he's bringing a lot of interest with respect to veteran businesses, and I know he's been talking to some of you about that. And then Nicole, who is a student at the university, who is one of the leading student advocates at the university with the new Veterans Club at the university. And we're working together to establish veteran centers on all the campuses in the state. So, Nicole and Tim.
Madam Chair, members of the Assembly, Mayor Sullivan, my name is Tim Wheeler. I'm nominated to the Military Veterans Affairs Commission. I started the Alaska Veterans Business Alliance back in 2007. I've advocated for veteran businesses and job creations for the state of Alaska. I've also lived in Washington, D.C. last year and advocated on Capitol Hill. Last September, presidential appointee Karen Mills from the Administrator of Small Business Administration appointed me to the Advisory Committee on Veteran Business Affairs. When I opened the letter, and it was actually handwritten by Karen, I was surprised, shocked, and honored to be on a federal advisory committee of a member of 15 members that we represent 3.6 million veteran businesses across the country. But as I stand here before you today, this means a lot because this is my community. I've been here since '94, and I look forward to serving. Thank you.
Madam Chair. Mr. Wheeler, if you could share with the rest of the panel, but I know I talked to you a moment ago, what branch of service were you in and what your years of service?
U.S. Army 90 to 98.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hello, Madam Chair, Assembly members, Mayor Sullivan. My name is Staff Sergeant Tovar. I'm in the U.S. Army Reserves right now, and I'm the president of the Veterans Club at UAA, and I'm honored to serve and represent the veteran population that's going to school and our future leaders.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you both. Thank you.
Mayor, Assembly, and I look around and see many friends. Been nominated for the Port Commission, and I'm happy to serve. Thank you.
We appreciate that service, too. Thank you, sir.
It's always hard to follow Jim DiMaggio, I got to tell you. My name is Doreen Lorenz. I am originally from Seward, Alaska. I'm fourth-generation Alaskan, but my family moved to Anchorage, and when I got to ride on it, when Tudor Road is a dirt road, started elementary school at kindergarten at Tudor Elementary, and ended up graduating at Chigiak. And during those glory years of the Alaska Repertory Theater, I had the awesome opportunity to really enjoy the arts of Alaska, and specifically of Anchorage. And everything from being a writer myself, I've had book signings here, I've been involved in children's theater, adult theater, the film industry, You name it, I've been in it in Anchorage, and I've really enjoyed it, and I appreciate this opportunity to be able to serve on your Arts Commission. Thank you, Madam Chair, Assembly, and Mayor.
Very good. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who was just appointed to a board or commission? Okay. We also had some executive appointments there, Mr. Mayor. Are any of them here?
They are.
Could we meet them?
Gentlemen, ladies.
Madam Chair, Assembly members, my name is Craig Willard. I'm the newly appointed General Manager of the Anchorage Water and Wastewater Utility. I want to thank the Mayor for his vote of confidence and the opportunity to lead what is a really great group of water quality professionals who are very dedicated to serving this community and protecting its public health. So, looking forward to meeting with you all and working with you. And again, thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Mayor.
We're going to be seeing a lot of each other.
We will.
I'm glad.
Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I could interject here, too, I want to give a special thanks to John McClellan for filling in as the acting manager during this time where we were interviewing candidates. He did an outstanding job for the utility. So I saw him here, I thought.
He was here. Yes, John did a fabulous job as the interim general manager. We share your appreciation.
Couldn't help notice he snuck out the moment we voted.
I know. I'm sorry. I wanted to give him his props there. But
Okay.
anyway, I'll convey it to him personally.
Thank
Very good. Thank you, sir.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Assembly members, and Mayor. My name is Ron Haddon. I will be the new purchasing officer, and I feel very fortunate to be joining the team and look forward to working with all of you.
And we'll also be seeing a lot of you, sir.
Yes,
so-
ma'am, I understand.
Very good. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you for doing it. All right. Very good. So with that, we are on
91.
to 11A. 9A1.
91, ma'am.
Hold on. I'm sorry. You are correct.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry to interject. Did we skip over approval of the minutes?
No, sir, we did
We
that.
did. Okay, I missed it. I'm sorry.
Very first thing. All right. Mr. Flynn, did you want to say anything else? I see you in queue here. That was it. All right. We are now at Res AR 251. This is a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing October 2011 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. A motion would be in order.
Second.
Is there any objection to approval? Seeing none, that is approved unanimously. Is there a representative who would like to step forward? Yes, there is. All right. Who's reading? Ms. Drummond? You're reading?
All right. This is a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing October 2011 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Whereas the Council on Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault, the University of Alaska Anchorage Justice Center, and Washington State University Vancouver conducted a 2010 survey showing 47.6% of adult women in Alaska experienced domestic violence in their lifetime. And whereas in Alaska, 75% of domestic violence victims are women, and violence against women in Alaska ranks among the highest in the nation. And whereas 30 to 60% of perpetrators of domestic violence also abuse children in the household, and 1 in 3 high school students have been or will be involved in an abusive relationship. And whereas domestic violence is an epidemic that crosses generations and affects individuals in every community, regardless of age, economic status, race, gender, religion, nationality, or educational background. And whereas residents, law enforcement, and local and state leaders are working to provide effective services and assistance to domestic violence survivors through education, support, and advocacy services. And whereas the Anchorage Domestic Violence Prevention Project, October 2005, December 2009, was a collaborative partnership between the Municipality of Anchorage Health and Human Services Department, Municipality of Anchorage Prosecutors, Anchorage Police Department, and Abused Women's Aid in Crisis, or AWAKE. designed to increase offender accountability through the criminal justice system and enhance victim advocacy. And whereas the project's findings, reported in November 2009, reflect success in improving offender accountability in these areas. The average number of arrest warrants served per month increased 123.7%. Defendants were 54.7% less likely to have a prior assault charge. The number of domestic violence cases reported per month increased 64.2%. The average length of time to process a domestic violence case decreased 56.5%. The number of cases dismissed or declined decreased by 63%. And whereas the Alaska Network on Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault has been developed 2 sets of radio and television public service announcements airing since March 2011, Real Alaskans Choose Respect, focusing on getting help if you're a victim or perpetrator of domestic violence or sexual assault, and Real Alaska Men Choose Respect, focusing on the important responsibility men have in changing attitudes towards violence and stopping domestic violence in our state. And whereas the annual Awake event, Silent Nights, Starry Nights, will be held on October 22, 2011 at the Captain Cook Hotel, with all proceeds to benefit domestic violence, safe shelter, and intervention by Awake. And whereas the Alaska Native Justice Center provides advocacy and support to victims of domestic violence and is supported by Anchorage Police Chief Mew and State of Alaska Commissioner of Public Safety Joseph Masters as board members, and former Police Chief Walt Monaghan as President and Chief Executive Officer. And whereas we must continue to work together as a community to increase public awareness, educate residents, and participate in events that assist domestic violence prevention. Now, therefore, the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizes October 2011 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month, passed and approved by the Anchorage Assembly this day.
Madam Chair, Assembly members, and Mayor Sullivan, my name is Susie Pearson, and I'm the Executive Director for Abused Women's Aid in Crisis. I appreciate this opportunity to say thank you for the resolution that you've presented tonight and your support of Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Every year, we choose the month of October to try and shed light on the issue of domestic violence in our community. With the Governor's initiative on domestic violence and sexual assault, there's been widespread acknowledgement about the pervasiveness of these issues in our state, which has prompted discussions in communities throughout Alaska to find ways to address and end domestic violence in our communities. The resolution points to some of the statistics that dismay and dishearten us, that there are those who treat people that they say that they love with a fist or an abusive word. However, it also points to some of the successes that Anchorage has had in addressing domestic violence. With your ongoing support, we can make a difference and stop violence in Anchorage. I feel it's important to recognize those who have planned the month's events in an effort to provide opportunities for dialogue for all of us and to honor the victims and survivors of domestic violence. Officers Rhonda Street and Doug Chin from the Anchorage Police Department, Jen Miller and Kristen Jenko from Alaska Families Against Domestic Violence, Kiwi Olson from Standing Together Against Rape, Jennifer Fries from J Bear's Family Advocacy, Michelle Love and Amy Riley from South Central Foundation's Willis Way Program, and Amanda Matthews, Soma Creeman, and Laura Yaskell from Awake. You've each been provided a calendar of events for October, and there are also some back in the for the audience to pick up. I hope that you will all join me at opening ceremonies on October 3rd at noon. It's going to be at the Anchorage Museum at Rasmussen Center, and we'll be celebrating the collaborations that we've planned for October, as well as to hear about the 2011 victimization study, which is a regionalized study and has statistics specific to the rates of domestic violence here in Anchorage. Once again, thank you for your support, and I do appreciate the service you do for our community.
Thank you. Mr. Honeman has a question.
Yes. Thank you so much, and it's one of those things that you want to celebrate, of course, the awareness, the education, and the information. It's very important. Sobering numbers, of course, that goes through. I would just like to, again, thank you for your opportunity to present the information that is out to the community in that effort, and also to take a few moments to recognize Officers Iverson and Stafford, who work on the other end, where they actually knock on the doors, to try to keep compliance with the judge's orders of no contact, and
Yes.
really has made a difference, I believe, and so...
Incredible. It's been an incredible project, yes.
Keep up the great work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next item before us is 9A2 AR 258. This is a resolution recognizing, remembering, and honoring Tiberius Coleman for 12 years of service in the Public Health Division's IM program at the Department of Health and Human Services.
Move to approve.
Is there any objection to approval? Seeing none, that is approved unanimously. Is there a representative for Mr. Coleman here? Yeah, please come forward. Yeah, why don't you all come on down and...
Well, Madam Chair, this is a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing, remembering, and honoring Tiberius Coleman for 12 years of service in the Public Health Division's IM program at the Department of Health and Human Services. Whereas in October 1999, Tiberius Ty Coleman was hired by the Department of Health and Human Services and served steadfastly until his passing on August 28, 2011. And whereas Ty was a superb example of what a public servant should be through his dedication to environmental conscientiousness and protection through the vehicle admission program at DHHS. And whereas Ty demonstrated selflessness and a commitment to those who were in need through his volunteer time as a counselor at Covenant House. And whereas Ty's enthusiasm for DHHS and his colleagues was evident by his valuable participation as a volunteer on the holiday committee, his vegetarian contributions at the division potlucks, and his once yearly planning of a program camping trips. And whereas Ty displayed excellence, faithfulness, and a valuable sense of humor that will not easily be replaced. And whereas Ty is an individual who will be greatly missed by all those who knew him and came to see him as their counselor, colleague, and friend. Now, therefore, the Anchorage Assembly recognizes and honors Tiberius L. Coleman for his life and service to the municipality of Anchorage, passed and approved by Anchorage Assembly on this day.
Would anybody like to say anything?
Well, me and all my family, my brothers are here, my grandparents, and all of my dad's friends from work. I'm his daughter, Shelby Coleman. We're all really grateful for the recognition of my dad's service. So thank you very much.
Well, we certainly appreciate his service, and I can tell he has a great supportive family, so I'm glad you all came. Thank you. The next item before us is from the addendum. It is 9B4. This is AR 265. It's a resolution from the municipality providing for the appropriation of a donation of $20,000 from the Target Corporation to the Anchorage Public Library for the Community Read Program.
Move to approve.
And that was seconded by Ms. Johnston. Mr. Honeman, you pulled that?
Yes, and this will be for actually 9B4 and 9B5 as well. I could do both comments if you'd like, Madam Chair, and move to more without further comment. But just wanted to recognize, obviously, the outstanding contributions our Anchorage Municipal Libraries receive throughout the year. And these are, although they may not be in the millions, they certainly every penny counts towards a great library system here. And Target being a great neighbor, certainly, as well as information and money and labor efforts coming from the Friends of the Library. So I just wanted to take just a few moments to pause and thank those folks in our community that makes our municipal library systems the great asset and jewel that it is for the community. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, is there any objection to approval of this item? There appears to be none, so that is approved unanimously. The next item before us is 9B5. This is AR 266. This is a resolution providing for the appropriation of $3,000 from the Friends of the Library donation to the Anchorage Public Library Miscellaneous Grants Funds for the purchase of library youth materials.
Move to approve.
Seeing no discussion, is there any objection to approval of this item? Seeing none, that item is also approved unanimously. All right. We are now going back to the regular agenda and 9E5. This is information, AIM 102, the internal audit report on the E911 surcharge. Ms. Gray-Jackson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Move to accept.
Second.
I, as chair of the Municipal Audit Committee, it's the committee's responsibility to review audits presented by Mr. Askins and his staff, and I believe that this particular audit deserves further discussion at the Municipal Audit Committee level. Therefore, Madam Chair, I'm moving to postpone accepting this audit report until the meeting of October 25th, and the clerk is scheduling a meeting of the Municipal Audit Committee to further discuss this audit. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, I'll need a second for that motion.
Second.
All right, is there then any objection to deferring this until the 25th? Seeing none, then, this is continued on until the 25th. Thank you, Ms. Gray-Jackson.
I'm on the committee. Madam Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Tromley.
Ms. Gray-Jackson, what time is that meeting on the 25th? Have you?
Thank you, Mr. Tromley. The clerk is scheduling that meeting, but
do we know what time?
Probably at noon.
Probably at noon?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Do you have a confirmed time? All right, we'll send out an email and we'll post it on the municipal calendar once we get a confirmed time. All right, thank you. All right, let's see. I believe that got us through the consent agenda, and we are now at item 11A. And this item, if you recall, this is the AR 182. It's a resolution denying an alcoholic beverage conditional use for a duplicate beverage dispensary license 4157, the B2A for Rum Runners Old Town and Grill. And if you recall, we closed the public hearing on this, and there is no motion pending. Mr.
Move to
Hall?
postpone indefinitely.
Second.
All right. Seeing no objection to that, that matter is postponed indefinitely. The next item before us is 11B, AIM 88. This is the 2011 MLNP transition from board governance to municipal utility. Ms. Johnston?
To move to postpone this to our October 11th meeting?
Or shows us our next meeting, so
Yes.
to continue it on till that time, and that was seconded by Mr. Trombley. Is there objection to that? Hearing and seeing none, this matter is continued on till October 11th. The next item before us is 11C. This is, excuse me, AM 510. It's the Port Intermodal Expansion Project Memorandum of Understanding with the Maritime Administration. And this matter was postponed from our previous meeting, but there is no motion pending.
Move to approve? Accept?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, please vote. That item passes unanimously. Thank you for coming, gentlemen. We're glad you're here anyway.
Have a nice evening.
The next item before us is 11D, which is AR 231. This is a resolution establishing fiscal guidelines for proposed expenditures in the 2012 municipal operating and capital spending plans. And this item was postponed, but there is a motion to approve on the floor, is what my notes say. So, Mr. Starr, I will yield to you, and I understand there's a rep here from the BAC?
Correct. That was the primary. We had a little meeting overlap issue. That's appreciate the reconsideration tonight of the item. Mr. Clary, you represent the BAC. Did you have an opinion from that committee?
Yes, I do. For the record, Andy Clary from the Budget Advisory Commission. The commission did meet, and we looked at the resolution, and we are in agreement with it as written. There was unanimous consent and support for it. My personal take, I just had a few items on here, but for me, I think there were a couple of us that thought it might be useful to state the reason why utility debt is excluded. I know you've explained to us that it's not the taxpayers that are on the hook for that, it's the ratepayers. So that's why it was excluded from the numbers. Just to have that point of clarification on the record may be good enough. And for me, to see the $478 million in property tax revenue listed there, that's inclusive of both Muni and ASD, but yet the resolution speaks to just the Muni budget. So the differentiation there is just, if you're not on the inside and don't know, it may not stand out clearly that that is both Muni and school taxes there together. Other than that, it's always a roll of the dice to go down to Juneau and ask for money. So, but on the last point there on the resolution, but that was basically all that we discussed. Again, we support it.
You do have some questions, sir. Ms.
Sure.
Johnston, you're first.
Actually, this is more in discussion, but I do appreciate your work and appreciate you looking at this.
All right. Mr. Honeman, you had a question?
Yeah, the BAC, did you meet in concert with the new realignment where the school budget advisory commission members were there?
Yes, it was the full complement of 11.
Was there discussion on the dollar amount and percentage? I speak specifically to item number 1 on page 2, if you will, the backside. The budget growth adjustment of no more than 1.8%. Was there discussion as to whether or not that would be appropriate or enough, if you will, to cover the increases in either fuel costs or labor costs per contracts that are signed and negotiated and basically have to deliver on? Is that enough? Did you guys take enough time to review it and see if that reconciled?
Yes, we looked at that, and again, the agreement was we actually appreciated the fact that it was limited to 1.8%, which matches the 5-year average of CPI.
But I guess my question was, did you look at the numbers given the, let's just say the labor contracts average 4%, and you're asking for only an increase of I guess the resolution speaks to 1.8%. Where do we reconcile that difference if the cost of fuel, the cost of light bills, cost of labor exceeds 1.8%? Was there any discussion about that, and did you guys attempt to do any reconciling?
Well, we are about to embark on a full department-by-department review of the budget once it's released into this week. So I imagine a lot of those ideas will come forth out of that. But again, that's that's why you guys are here.
At the end, I understand. I'm just asking up front for if you reviewed that for reconciling purposes. Didn't sound like it was done yet. So
I mean, we were in agreement that we don't want to put more burden on the taxpayer. Taxes keep going up and up and up. So to limit it at a reasonable rate, why should they go up higher than inflation?
I guess the direct answer would be if there were costs that already fixed that we can't do much in the way of controlling. But that's another discussion. I was just asking, had it been done at the BAC level, particularly in the interest of the school district with the new members and the way it's configured now under the new commission. Doesn't sound like it was done. Thank you.
Mr. Trombley.
In approving this, would you say that the assumption was made that if there are set increases that it would naturally occur that there would be corresponding cuts in order to meet that 1.8% increase?
Well, yeah, that's
okay.
Reasonable.
All right, just wanted to get that on the record. Thanks. I guess that's the way you hit the 1.8% is by making corresponding cuts in other departments.
And those are coming forth in the review.
Thank you very much for your service. I do, Mr. Clary, have I guess a little plea with you. I didn't realize the BAC had met until you and I had that email exchange about 3 or 4 hours ago. So unfortunately, I told several people that this was going to be continued because I didn't realize. I know you didn't have time to prepare anything written, but if it's possible after meetings, if you could just send a quick email to all Assembly members so we know what the discussion is ahead of time, then we can maybe be prepared.
I knew Mr. Starr was aware of it.
Yeah, I apologize. Mr. Starr and I have not spoken.
Okay.
So, thank you very much, sir.
Yep, you're welcome.
All right. With that, the item is before us. Mr. Starr, you want to speak to it first?
Yeah, briefly, again, the product of the committee here is to provide those guidelines. That's our primary responsibility, is to provide the guidelines to the administration, and then they, as of this Friday, will tender back to us their interpretation of what they feel necessary to run government. Obviously, Mr. Honeman's already alluded, there's probably 4 primary things. I want to speak to each of them only as a general speak. The first is the adjustment of total dollars as a percentage, and that is the overall dollar amount that we're mentioning. And that's a little bit divergent. I know this body's had discussions about what part of the 451 we actually have control over, and our discussion at the committee level was we feel like we have some influence over the additional revenues collected and the choices therein of either one-time monies or specific grants or program dollars that go into the 451. So that's where that logic came from. Number 2 was I guess personally I was a little bit I guess taken aback that the mayor would comment already that he's I don't want to quote him, but I felt that there was some friction on whether or not the new voter approved debt policy here would make any sense. And that basically generated from a discussion about our debt service requirements. They're going to approach $50 million this year of tax dollars collected. We're going to spend $50 million. That's up from $39 million now. And so the idea that we would continue to run up our debt service either without a fiscal model and a plan to address it, as number 4 speaks to. But I'm also interested in Ms. Mahoney, do we have unissued debt now that we're holding on to? Or unissued voter-approved bonds?
Yeah. Through the chair, yes, we do. At this point in time, we currently have $63 million in authorized but not issued debt. But of that $63 million, because the proposition was approved by the voters, we have spent down $10 million, which would result in a net of $53 million as of yesterday that is approved but not issued.
And is that both sides of the ASD bonded indebtedness program as well as the MOAs, or is that just the MOA side?
That is just the MOA side.
So I guess technically then if we issued the $53 million and then we had a authority to issue more in April, we're going to basically raise taxes as we issue the debt. Is that how that works then?
As we issue new debt in April of 2012, the annual debt service increase associated with that would be in 2013.
So a year after is how that appropriation would work. Okay, thank you for that. Again, the concept that we talked about at the committee level that struck us was also what the federal government was seeing in their ability to pay that debt. And we're hearing it, at least in my constituent body, that the only way, of course, to service that is through property tax increases, and so that debt service started to come into target, especially with the increase of 39 to 50 million this year. The spending constraint policies and the budgeting strategies are hopefully to get some return on our investment. That was the first comment that was made at the committee level. The Kronos authorized money, the ERP program of $10 million. Those hopefully turn into real quantifiable budget numbers that we can discuss as we get the budget plan in front of us. And number 4 is a little bit of a product that comes out of perhaps a 6-year fiscal plan that we have out in front of us. The 6-year fiscal plan that we reviewed last year and should have out soon speaks to the spending plan necessarily, but the $1.2 billion in debt, if we just keep the attitude of if we pay down $40 million and we reissue $40 million, when do we ever get out of debt? And is $1.2 billion a line of credit, or is that something that we should try to whittle down? the logic that we put that out in front of Juneau, however contentious that may be, it did come out of committee, and I think it's prudent for this body to discuss it for a couple different aspects. One of them is we seem to always have the discussion about how the revenue sharing portion of the government dollars is dispersed at the time we get those Juneau appropriations, and so I'd like to have the discussion on the revenue sharing program and the application of those dollars far out, and that's why that language is in here. So thank you for the consideration.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Bill, I just got a question for you on page 2, line 9 and 10. You talked about item 2 earlier. No new voter-approved bond debt. I heard the mayor wants to bring forward some park bonds, road bonds. Are you saying that if we approve this, Assembly should hold to it, not send those items to the ballot, or what, Bill?
That was sort of the discussion, is that, first off, we have unissued debt that can come out, $53 million for program revenues if it isn't already allocated or appropriated. The voter intentions sometimes are not as clear. So if there's unspent dollars, for the example, the ASD side of it has had a new recent policy, perhaps with projects that come in under voter-approved dollars. Those dollars in bonded are still available. Perhaps a rethink at using up some of that. I don't know the number that ASD has outstanding, but $53 million outstanding on our side may very well carry us another year and allow us to pay down even more. I think we're retiring $33 million this year. The logic was let's retire a little bit more and get that bonded indebtedness down.
Thank you, Bill. Mr. Mayor, are you planning on bringing some bonds forward for I know it's a long ways away yet, but is the administration planning on bringing some bonds forward to submit to the voters for their approval in the April ballot?
We'll be introducing the budget on Friday.
Okay. Well, I've got to make a decision tonight, Mayor. And if you're planning on bringing bonds, then it makes no sense to approve this particular item, sir.
I guess I can give you a general update. There will be a proposition for a capital budget item. Our CIP has, regular steps in it where every year we do try and maintain a capital project schedule. And so we want to maintain at least some semblance of a capital project schedule so projects don't get discontinued midway, and it's for continuity purposes. It also, just not to editorialize too much here because we'll get into great discussion over the next few months, but it's real hard to go down to Juneau and ask for capital money when they see that you may not be contributing at the local level at a level that they think is responsible. But Mr. Starr's point's well taken. I mean, we do have some monies. It's just if they're designated in certain areas, that may not mean that you can use them for projects where you want to keep continuity and not get off schedule.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Trainey, if I can respond, I know the question was to me as the mayor inputted, but one of the comments that came through the committee was the direct link. This is probably the first time that we've actually put guidelines in a budget resolution to restrict sort of the capital approach to the budget. And I think the link there in the discussion that we had, and especially by Mr. Trombley, was, capital invested dollars turn into tax dollars next year, essentially, and that's what Ms. Mahoney said as well. So I think it's real prudent that we watch that $53 million still hasn't hit the tax rolls yet. We're going to put on some more if, in fact, more bonds come on there. So, that's the link that was mentioned at our committee level, which I think has not been spoken on this body as well, is that there is a link between those two budgets. The capital approved budget becomes tax revenue dollars required the year later, and that becomes an operational dollar. So that's the emphasis, I think, on that point, as opposed to betterment of the city or project. It's how does that link back to taxes the next year?
Bill, I think if you're going to hold that logic, then the issue is to talk to the voters and urge them not to approve the bonds. Because this isn't an issue of the Assembly passing a bond. It's got to go to the voters to be a voter-approved initiative. They're the taxpayers are the ones that pay the bill. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Ms. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Clary, for bringing forward some comment from your committee. One in particular, number 4, where it doesn't indicate that the $478 million also includes the school district, and also one asking for more clarification on the utility debt. I was under the impression, Madam Chair, that there was going to be another budget advisory commission, not budget advisory, budget and finance committee meeting. Although I'm not a member, I will be attending every single one of them. I missed the first one. And I would really like to see this item postponed and have it brought before before the Budget and Finance Committee once again because I have some comments that I really would rather not prolong this evening discussing it. The next meeting, I think, is October 20th, Mr. Starr? Thank you, Mr. Starr. So, Madam Chair, I would really like to see this postponed because I think there's a little more work that needs to be done, and I don't want to sit here this evening and go back and forth wordsmithing this document. It's too serious a document to do that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Honeman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Along that line, I strangely find myself kind of in a conflict here of thought and mindset, and I think it's just a little premature. I, too, Mr. Starr, would like to see that unspent dollar amount and what categories, and I'm not sure if Ms. Mahoney has that data available to her today for us to make the decision. I'd like to see if it is something we could reconcile with proposals of bonds, and I guess it would have to wait until the proposal, the budget's proposed and presented. So with that, I would like to make a motion that we postpone until the Budget and Finance Committee on October 20th, so our meeting will be the 25th.
All right, the motion to continue to and send to committee has been made and seconded. Mr. Starr, you're in queue. Did you want to speak to that?
No, but I will. I appreciate the opportunity for that. I don't suggest that we postpone it. This was put out after committee work was done on it and read into our record on the 30th, which is August 30th. It's a pretty good time. You took action last week to get the BAC. That was the primary directive, I think, for the last meeting, which I didn't attend. You took action to postpone it until the BAC weighed in. They've now done that. So I think it's time is of the essence. We need to get into probably the most important function that we do, and that's the budget discussions and the budget speak. And that starts this Friday when we start to see the budget. So I think we need to force our work efforts forward, and I won't be supporting a delay.
Mr. Trainey, on the continuance.
Madam Chair, I'll move to continue this. I'll join with my colleagues because I want to see what the mayor is going to bring forward to us.
Okay, well, at that time, the motion is before us to continue and refer to committee. So, Ms. Gray-Jackson, did you want to speak further on that?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Starr, thank you for bringing this forward. But I don't see any need to rush. I think we're going to have plenty of time if we hear it again at committee and then bring it forward at our meeting on the 25th to approve. There's plenty of time to do that, Mr. Starr. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, I see no one else in the queue on this matter, so I'm going to put on the board, if you want to continue this till October, I'm sorry, one more time, 20th, is that it, Mr. Starr?
25th.
25th. Then please vote so. And that looks like it fails. All right, so we're back to the main motion. Is Ms. Gray-Jackson, do you want to speak?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I would. On line 36, after 478 million, I move to add, which includes the Anchorage School District.
Second.
All right, is everybody clear? That's on the front page, line 36, after 478, the words "to include the Anchorage School District." And if you have time to write that down and pass it to the clerk, it would be appreciated. Is there discussion on that matter? There are people in queue, but I'm going to... Does anybody object to that? Mr. Starr?
Well, I don't want to jump the queue, but yeah, I kind of object to the language there. I'm not sure that I don't mind the illustration of that, but you know, it basically says we collect $478 million in taxes. You know, do we collect them on behalf of the school district? We probably do, but the tax bill also collects on behalf of the fire department and the police department. So I'm just not sure that you know the $90.4 million in annual debt service expense makes more sense. Is that where you intended to put the wording? Or did you say
Madam
after
Chair,
478?
If I may.
Yeah, just a minute. Yeah, are you through, Mr.? Okay, go ahead, Ms. Gray-Jackson.
I think it makes a lot of sense, as Mr. Clary mentioned, to be very clear to the citizens in this community that $478 million is not just general government, but it's also the Anchorage School District.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Johnston, did you want to speak to this? Mr. Honeman, did you want to speak to this?
To this motion, no.
All right. It appears that the people who are left in queue are on other topics. So at this time, I'm going to put, if you want to include the words after $478 million, which includes the Anchorage School District, please vote so. And that passes 7 to 4. All right. So we're back to, that's incorporated. We're back to the main matter. Ms. Johnston?
Yes, I'd like to amend, actually, I'd like to delete item 2 on page 2, and those are line 9 and 10.
Do you want to speak to that, Ms. Johnson?
Yes, even though I appreciate the intent of both Assemblymember Starr and the BAC, there's two things that come to mind when you do this. One is we are a service district type of government, and a number of our bonds are service districts, so it's like the Anchorage Road Service District, the Parks Service District, which doesn't include Eagle River, either of them. And I feel that we're disenfranchising some of our constituents by not allowing the opportunity to vote on it. I also feel that we need to have some skin in the game when we go to Juneau. I think it's very important as we go down and lobby for our capital programs. I know there's always an interest as far as the haves and haves not and who has to ante up to get funds, but I still say we're the largest community and we do get a lion's share, and I think we need to show our good faith by having some skin in the game. Even though we did have a little hiccup this year where the governor vetoed some of those projects, I still think it's very important. And as the mayor said earlier, he and I were at a port meeting where we discussed the port appropriation, which is it's a major issue for Anchorage and the state, and we're going to be asking a lot of our legislators for that. And when we were discussing this with Commissioner LaHood, he said that our opportunity of maybe accessing some of the federal money is when we all have some skin in the game. And I think that's just a matter of good politics. Thank you.
Ms. Gray-Jackson on that amendment?
I'll pass, Madam Chair.
Mr. Honeman on that amendment?
Well, I think if we had been able to postpone the resolution, I would not have probably supported this at this time, but given the fact that we're going to have to pass a document without having all the knowledge of what we even have that's sitting there on the table, and if it could apply, I would have to support this amendment or removal. Thank you.
All right. Seeing no one else in the queue, please vote on the amendment, which is to delete item 2. And that passes 8-3. So the main matter is before us as amended. Mr. Honeman.
I'd like to make a motion to amend item number 1 on page 2. It would be line 6, and for the budget growth of no greater than 2.8%. And I don't know what the dollar figure is, but I suspect it'd be somewhere around $4.5 million in addition.
I'm pausing because there appears to be no second, sir. Second. Oh, I'm sorry. All right. Could you touch the screen so I get that? All right. That item was seconded then. Discussion on that. Anything further, Mr. Honeman?
Yes, the discussion, Madam Chair. We have an academy that's just finished up with the fire department recently. We got an academy on the 24th or 25th, starting for Anchorage Police Department. We've got an additional 14 staff at AFD that just hired on. We're buying new vehicles. We've got contracts that are coming due that are on both sides of the house, both ASD and the MOA General. I'm just really concerned that if we're hamstringing ourselves, we're saying on both ends we're going to spend more money on add more people, and we're going to reduce and that may lead to the brand new people, based on some labor agreements, walking out the door and at risk of some of the grants that we've obtained to hire, like particularly, in instance, the fire department, the SAFER grant. So I think that we're hamstringing ourselves, and I trust that the administration is going to present a very viable budget. We won't know until Friday. I urge support.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, thank you. The administration couldn't support that amendment because that number would actually put us over the tax cap, absent any other revenues that we don't currently predict would be available.
Okay.
So we're comfortable with the number that Mr. Starr has put forth in the resolution.
All right. Seeing no one else in Q, please vote on this amendment. It's on line 7, page 2, to change the figure to 2.8. 2.6? I'm sorry, what did I say?
Madam
Line
Chair,
6, I apologize.
given the circumstances, if that exceeds the cap limit, then I'll just withdraw the motion on it.
Well, at this point, we've discussed it, so instead I'm going to say that you're urging a no vote.
I'm urging a no vote.
Very
That number
correct.
falls.
There you go, sir. Ms. Drummond, would you vote, please? And that one fails. All right, the main motion is amended, is before us. Anything else? Anybody else? Seeing nothing further, please vote on the matter as amended. And that passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Mr. Starr, for your work on that. All right, the next item before us, we're actually, I think this might be a good time. That finishes 11. Might be a good time to take our break. So at this time, we'll take about a 20-minute at ease for a dinner break. If Assembly members could return to their seats, please. All right, the next item before us is item 13A. This is AO91. It's an ordinance amending Anchorage Municipal Code Title 11 to add preventative and protective measures in response to criminally offensive sexual behavior of an applicant or licensed chauffeur, prescribing rules and conditions to guide administrative action and providing for an immediate effective date. There is the initial ordinance, there is an S version, there is an S1 version, and an S2 version.
Thank you.
Just so everyone knows. So I believe, I'm looking, but I believe that we did not close the public hearing, we continued it.
That is correct.
So if there's anybody who'd like to speak to us on this taxi cab issue, please come forward. Come forward, sir, and if you could start with giving your name and spelling it, we'd appreciate it.
My name is Ray Faust. I'm Deputy or Vice Chair of the Public Safety Commission.
Okay.
And it's F-A-U-S-T. Raymond is R-A-Y. If I could approach, I have some copies of our resolution.
Thank you. Just give them to the clerk and she'll make sure we get them. And we did get an email from you too. Well, not from you personally, but from the commission.
Okay. I'm here to let you know that we did review that at our last meeting last week, and we reviewed the S2 version. Excuse me, the S1. We didn't have a chance to look at the S2. It wasn't available at the time. There's 3 points in there that, let me back up. I just want to let you know we support the ordinance with 3 revisions I hope you incorporate in your final version. And if I may, I just read the 3 sections real quick. Section F1, have it changed to read criminally offensive sexual behavior, which includes offensive name in AS 411.41 or 11.41, or identified by similar code of law and jurisdictions. What our thought was there is we didn't wanted to make sure that if we're using other laws from other jurisdictions as a comparison to here, we want to make sure that we don't have any language in there that might confuse someone, that a law that at some other location might not apply here and may end up creating problems. The other part is that was fairly important. We wanted to make sure that this applied to arrests or charges only. We didn't want to get into any evidentiary problems with a person that is charged with that crime. And that part also will suspend that license pending however the commission looks for that. And then the last part, the criminally offensive sexual behavior, that was just kind of cleaning up the ordinance so it wasn't repetitive and it was the same throughout.
Mr. Hodeman has a question?
Yeah, just Thank you, Mr. Faust, for coming in. I noticed Ms. Castle as well, also from the Public Safety Advisory Commission here, and was in attendance and appreciated. S2, the reason you didn't see it is as a work product after the Public Safety Advisory Commission and reflects some of the changes. Not all, but some of the changes from the Advisory Commission. And I appreciated the opportunity to be there and listen in on your discussion. Anyway, thank you very much.
We appreciate it.
My question to you, sir, is have you had a chance to look at S2 since the meeting started?
No, we haven't.
All right. There should be copies available both in the lobby or from staff if you'd like to take a look at it.
Okay.
Thank you. There seem to be no further questions, sir.
May I just make one other comment? We understand there may be some other ordinance coming down the pike through the Assembly, and I'd like to request through Madam Chair and the Clerk that as those ordinances become available to forward them to our committee so we can review them at our October meeting.
Well, in the past, we have tried, when there's anything specifically related to public safety, to check in with the Commission, but thank you for the reminder on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak to us on this matter? And as you come forward, I think we will be interested to know if you've had a chance to look at the S2, just in general. But go ahead.
I have not had a chance to look.
Okay.
My name is Jeffrey Landfield, Landfield. I graduated college a few years ago, and I did drive a cab for a few years while I was in school, so I have some experience in the industry. I just want to talk about the fact that in this country we are considered innocent until proven guilty, and I believe the existing justice system addresses the issue. If a judge feels someone is too dangerous for society, he can impose bail restrictions. I imagine judges can impose specific bail restrictions on individuals and industries which can affect society and citizens. I think assigning penalties for a simple accusation of assault or any other crime is too big of a gray area to be addressed with blanket legislation. This could encourage frivolous lawsuits. I wonder what the requirements are. I wonder if the Assembly has thought about the intricacies and possible ancillary effects the rules they're trying to impose could have on industry and individuals. As far as owner-operators go, I think that the industry and the permit holders themselves have the ability to regulate things like this, and I think we should do as much as we can to not impose regulations on labor markets. As we all know, there are many in place already. I would say that's my testimony.
Mr. Hoonman has a question.
Just want to thank you for coming out, giving your testimony. Just a couple quick things. We've had actually the permit owners, the American Civil Liberties Union, and the dispatch folks actually weigh in on the matter, and at least 3 attorneys, and I suspect there's probably a couple more out there that have reviewed it and offer some opinions, and so far, overwhelmingly, everybody seems supportive of the language change. Now, just so you know, this particular industry is already fairly regulated in the actual, the fact that it's not a right to have any kind of license for driving. It's more of a privilege, and it is fairly regulated at state level, municipal level here for chauffeur's license and such. So, and I really wish we could rely on the court system to do their job 100% of the time, and we believe this is one of those crack areas. But I just wanted you to know that I thank you very much for coming down and giving your testimony.
Right, if I could just respond, I would always say we should try to err on the side of liberty and justice and not produce rules that can potentially affect someone's ability to work without being formally convicted of a crime.
Well, no, that's the misunderstanding I wanted to correct to as well. I thank you for bringing that up, because the ordinance under S2 that you might have seen, makes it very clear that my intent, I think, I can't speak for the other authors here, but that you not be suspended under this ordinance unless you have been charged. That means that there's a level of probable cause that leads the criminal justice system to already take action against you. So,
all right. Well, I would say it's still they aren't convicted. So,
okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else who'd like to testify on this matter, please come forward.
Okay, Mark Marion, Marion, former Alaska cab dispatcher. And No, I have not had a chance to read S1 or S2, so, but I will let you know that this is a good ordinance for the industry, because what it does is it separates the bad apples from the good apples. And the thing about it is, if you actually read the ordinance, it also states that unless you are criminally charged through the court system, your license doesn't get suspended. So, not based on accusations or, stuff like that. So, also, as Dick Trini probably may have gotten an email on this, they're also in Chicago also doing similar issue with dangerous cab drivers as well, with assaults and that sort of thing. And and this is also a safety guard. And I don't know if the cameras were in S1 or S2, because I know we talked about that last time when we were here a couple weeks ago.
Anything else, sir?
No.
Okay, there is a question. Mr. Birch.
Yeah, I just was curious as to your, as an expert in the industry, your perspective kind of on the cameras, both for protection of the driver and the protection of the fare.
Well, the protection of the driver, basically the GPS system, if they hit the switch or whatever it is, then the dispatcher would investigate that, and if there's a problem, yes, we would call like law enforcement or anything like that. And also we would get other cab drivers in the area to see what else is going on.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone else who'd like to testify?
My name is Ann Lashover. I used to be a cab driver dispatcher for 20 years.
We didn't get your name because you weren't at the mic. Could you repeat?
Ann Lashover.
Latchholder?
Lashover.
You're going to have to spell it. I'm sorry.
Laschober, B as in boy, ER.
Thank you.
Now, I understand that you're all concerned about this. I find the circumstances of this cab driver and how things went, I find it very suspicious whether this woman was really attacked or not. And I am concerned that there are 3 people here that have basically, in my knowledge or my understanding, are conspiring to break the law themselves. You can't break the law to enact a legal ordinance, to protect or to follow the law or to make the law run for whatever you want it to go for. We can't give up our Miranda rights. We've given up enough of these things in our life. We start with the cab business and then it goes into everything else. I would wonder how all of you would feel to be falsely accused and to be put in jail and then be found guilty before you're even given a chance to be seen if you're innocent. I think, Honeman, too, you should look at all these police officers who, in the last years, 30 years, many more police officers committed crimes against women. We're looking at a few cab drivers in these 30 years. And as a dispatcher, I know these things, people tell me what's going on. I have a great deal of trust for the cab drivers. They do a very good job, and they're taken advantage of by a lot of people. I would hope today you would not take our Miranda rights away from you, from us, and you too, all of us, and citizens in, here in Anchorage or in the United States. The high courts and in the United States, we've all fought for these rights, we've died for these rights, we paid a lot of money for these rights. And I think that's about what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There appear to be no questions. Thank you. Anyone else who'd like to testify?
My name is Richard Evans, last name Echo Victor Alpha November Sierra. Second time I've been here to testify before this assembly. I'm going to basically reiterate some of the points that have been made here, but the reason why I'm here again today is because my concerns have not been addressed. I understand, Mr. Honeman, from the information I got in the newspaper that you've done a little bit of work on this. However, I overheard a comment earlier that there were no substantive changes made to this ordinance. I overheard that comment maybe Mr. Traney, and apparently with no substantive changes, we're still dealing with the same one. And no, I've not had an opportunity to see S2. As has been stated here before, as several people have said, my concern here is not, shall I say, that this crime shouldn't be punished or that an individual committing this crime shouldn't have something action taken against them. My concern has been evidenced by other people here. It's the same thing. This is a preemptive punishment before the law, a presumptive punishment before a person has had their day in court. This is an abrogation of the known, perhaps not reiterated. I think you all still have the notes I gave you last time. The Constitution does not guarantee that we are all innocent until proven guilty, but it is assumed from multiple amendments and is in the United Nations Charter under the humanitarian issues. And I urge you to look at the notes I gave you before. It is in their charter, presumption of innocence, innocence until proven guilty. Hundreds of years of jurisprudence in the United States of America guarantees us the right to be heard in a jury trial or before a judge who will judge whether or not we are guilty as charged. And if so, then punishment is administered. Punishment being administered before a person has been proven guilty in a court of law. I told a friend of mine after I left the last assembly meeting that this was what was being proposed. Her immediate comment was, that's illegal. What I'm saying here is my concern has not been addressed. This particular ordinance, if passed, will not just be one person, the person who is in jail right now, who can't get out of jail, who is no danger to anybody. It's been taken care of by the justice system. Thank you. They are in jail. You start presuming that people are already guilty, you will prejudice everyone out there in the community immediately. In the age of Facebook and instant text messages, the person's guilty before they've even had their day in court. So in this particular case, I understand and I do appreciate there are certain people here that are trying to protect the community. That is laudable. That is a very laudable goal. But we cannot pat all the corners in the universe. We do our best. The justice system does a fairly good job. I'm confident in the judges we've got. I think it'll work. I do not think we need to be presuming that people are guilty before they've had a chance to answer the charges against them. If they have that opportunity and they are guilty, then punish them. But don't do it to all of us, because this ordinance can be expanded. Other groups can be included. And as has been shown in the past, government, once given a power, is loath to give it back to the people or to give it back up. They are more likely to expand it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
There appear to be no questions. Anyone else who'd like to testify, please come forward. Anyone else? I can see no one. Public hearing is closed. Mr. Trainee?
Second.
The S2 version is before us.
Version in front of us, ma'am.
Mr. Trainee, would you like to speak to it?
Yes. I've got an amendment at the request of the municipal attorney. Amendment number 1, Section 5, page 6, lines 39 through 42, is amended to retain the retroactive provision stated as following without deletion. The following section number is reinstituted for Section 6. Section 5, the amendment to AMC Section 11.30.040G is effective retroactive to July 1st, 2011. Section 6, this ordinance shall become effective immediately upon passage and approval by the Assembly.
I'm sorry,
I'd like to get a second.
Yeah, thank you. That was what I was about to ask. Do we have a second?
I'm sorry, ma'am. It's old habits.
That's all right.
I'll give a copy of this to the clerk. This is the request of the municipal attorney, who's the one that has to represent us in court, so he wants like to have this added to it.
All right. Mr. Trombley, you're in queue. Do you want to speak to this amendment?
No, ma'am. To the
All right. Mr. Honeman, do you want to speak to this amendment?
Not the amendment.
Does anybody want to speak to the amendment? Seeing none, is there any objection to the amendment? There appear to be no objection, so the amendment is incorporated in the matter. Mr. Trainee, anything else?
Just that I would ask approval of this. This is the S2 version. It's gone to ACLU, who took a look at it and made a couple of changes to protect everybody's rights. And then we got an email from the taxi cab industry, from the people that do dispatching, that this needs to be passed. I know there's some controversy out there, but this went to the Public Safety Commission, and they approved this. So I would ask the body to approve this item. That's all, ma'am.
Mr. Trombley.
Madam Chair, I'd like to ask Representative Gruenberg to come forward. We had a chance to chat at a community council meeting, and I expressed some of my concerns, which a lot of the concerns that some of the people have expressed here. And he's also a member of the House Judiciary Committee, and I And I wanted to know, because I understand that this is fairly similar to what was passed in New York City, and it did go before, and Max can, but I basically, I sent him the link to the case in New York, and it actually went before the Second Court of Appeals, and which is a federal court, which showed it to be constitutional. And so I wanted to bring Max forward just for public record to clarify to people the constitutionality of what is being proposed here.
Well, Representative Grinberg, would you mind coming up and talking to us? I was going to acknowledge your presence. I didn't realize you were in queue to speak.
And Representative Gruber, I really appreciate you coming forward and taking your time out of the day to do this.
Well, first of all, good evening, friends and members of the Assembly and Madam Chair. It's not very often. In fact, I don't think I've ever been asked to do this before. And I'm pleased and honored, and I hope we can have more exchanges between your body and the legislature, because we're all in this together, and I'm happy to speak today foremost as a member of the Alaska Bar. This came up in the two community councils last week, and we chatted about it, and then I looked at the case, and I've looked at the S2 amendment, and I've looked at the trainee amendment to that also. And the case, just for the record, that Assemblyman Trombley mentioned is NEBE, N-N-E-B-E, November, Echo, Bravo, Echo, versus Daus, D-A-U-S. The citation is 644 F. 3rd, Federal Reporter 3rd, 147, 2nd Circuit, 2011. It's a very recent case. The City of New York has a series of ordinances that are very similar to the ordinance that's before you today. And the questions that came up in the federal courts were whether a summary suspension without a due process hearing is constitutional if the suspension can take place prior to a hearing. And both the Federal District Court and the Court of Appeals said yes, that was constitutional. And I think that's strong evidence that this is constitutional. For a you don't have to have a hearing before they suspend the license. The second question was, what is the nature of a due process right to a hearing after suspension? And the Court of Appeals, relying on several U.S. Supreme Court cases and cases from various courts of appeals, held that you do have a due process right to a hearing, and they laid out the standards, which I don't need to go into in great detail. They're the same standards the Alaska Supreme Court has applied in similar situations, not taxi cab ordinances, but the right to a hearing in certain circumstances. And the court remanded to the Federal District Court because there wasn't evidence in the record as to what the nature of the hearing and the process was in the City of New York. In the City of New York, there's a Taxi Cab Limousine Commission, TLC. They have professional hearing officers, administrative law judges, and they do this, and it looked like it was pretty well set out. So it's not just the transportation investigator, but they have a whole office that does this. But there wasn't the evidence to support exactly what they did when the case got up to the Court of Appeals. So they remanded it. Anyway, I have looked at the S2, and I have originally had 6 thoughts. 2 of them have been cured in the S2 version. 4 of them I'd like to address with your permission, Madam Chair. And I'm sorry I'm taking a little longer, but I wanted to have a good record so that you can understand at least my legal thinking here. The first is the whereas clauses. It would seem to me that it would be very good, and I'm just going to talk conceptually. I don't necessarily have language. I know you have an excellent attorney, Mr. Wheeler, and if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to help as a lawyer. But first, I think you should have another whereas clause. Based upon evidence in the record, it could be documentary or testimony from somebody that sets forth the exact nature of the due process that's given these folks under the ordinance. And then you could say something like, whereas the municipal ordinances and procedures do provide due process in the following respects. There's notice, there's a right to a hearing, of a right to an attorney, there are reviewable findings of fact, etc. And if something like that is a whereas in this bill, it will be what is called legislative factual findings, or legislative findings of fact. And that will be can be very persuasive to a reviewing court, particularly if there was evidence before the Assembly to support the inclusion of that. So my first suggestion, Madam Chair, is that there be an amendment that adds another whereas clause, setting forth briefly what the due process is in the procedure. I think that would be persuasive to a court. And that could go basically at the top of page 2, line 2, roughly there. Second comment, Madam Chair, is on page 3, line 6. I'm looking at the underlined language there. Or that continued suspension of or refusal to issue or reinstate the license would otherwise work a substantial injustice. That would appear to be an injustice to the applicant. It doesn't look at the need to protect the public. On the other hand, on the next page, it talks about, on page 4, lines, just excuse me, I want to be sure I have the right language here. Yes, I'm sorry. Line 4, page 4, lines 16 through 18. It talks about the public protection and the public trust. And I would respectfully suggest that on page 3, line 7, after substantial injustice, you add something to the effect, and be consistent with the need to protect the public. So in other words, the transportation investigator needs to consider the need to protect the public, or be consistent with public safety and trust. Something like that in there so that they have to look at both sides of the equation, and that would be a legal requirement then. My third comment, Madam Chair, is basically on page 4, lines 9 through 11, where the requirement must be that the chauffeur, quote, used a regulated vehicle, chauffeur license, or uniform to gain physical proximity or the trust of the victim. It seems to me that what you're after here isn't only whether the chauffeur did it in the taxi cab, but suppose they raped somebody in the hall, or they assaulted a child in school or something. That person shouldn't be driving a cab either, it seems to me. And if you take that language out, then you'll be able to suspend or revoke the license of somebody who's a sexual predator, even if they didn't happen to do it in the taxi cab, or do it in the uniform, or show their license. You're getting at the individual, not the location where the offense occurred. You're protecting the public. And I would suggest eliminating that language also. Now, because the language says use the vehicle or the license or the uniform, it assumes that the offense occurred after the licensing occurred, while the person was licensed. If you just eliminated it, then the person could have done it 25 years ago and been rehabilitated, etc. So I suggest the addition of the following language at the end, while licensed. So it would read that it is more likely that the chauffeur engaged in criminally offensive sexual behavior while licensed. and that gets to the same time. You may not like that language exactly, but it looks at the time, the same time frame as the original ordinance does. And finally, and this is something I'm not totally sure about, because the other ordinances are fairly comprehensive. And it seems that in certain respects, if the person, and I'm looking again on page 4, line 14, the transportation inspector must make a written finding that restrictions have been judicially imposed if they're not going to issue a suspension themselves. But I don't see anywhere here, and I could be dead wrong, and I would ask Mr. Wheeler or somebody to correct me if I am, that the transportation investigator must issue written findings of fact and conclusions of law to support the decision. That is number one, so that the applicant and the public know the legal and factual basis for the decision, and so a reviewing court can know that as well. This is a very serious step. Anyway, Madam Chair, thank you for your leeway in making these comments, and if I can be of any further help or answer any questions, I appreciate it.
Mr. Trombley?
No, I just want to thank you for your time, and I think it's important to get on public record. And I know it's in there that certain groups, ACLU said it's okay, but not a lot of people haven't heard their statements, haven't read their language, and so I think it's important to hear that the federal courts, the state of New York, has said it's okay, and that it would pass Alaska state law or constitutional law. It doesn't violate that, and I think that's really important for people to hear.
Mr. Holman, you had a question?
I just want to thank Representative Gruenberg for taking a fairly comprehensive review and look. I would say that there's other sections of the code that actually do apply to the due process, and actually I believe does speak to some of this. I'd have to ask Mr. Wheeler or Ms. Tucker to pull those up to section, because these are just the affected sections of the code that were netted for change. But I do agree with some of the language. Doesn't sound too unreasonable, but I would have to defer probably to both Mr. Wheeler and Ms. Tucker to
I apologize. I have not conferred with Mr. Wheeler or really anybody except Assemblyman Trombley on this. Thank you for your leeway.
Thank you very much, Representative Gruenberg. At this point, is there any further discussion on this matter? Mr. Flynn?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've never been particularly fond of legislating by anecdote. It is not like we have a situation where there are numerous cab drivers running around Anchorage perpetrating crimes against their passengers. In fact, I think cab drivers would tell you they're more likely to be victims of crime than perpetrators. And, the incident that led to this legislation was a very serious one, but the gentleman in question is not driving a cab and probably never will again. So I get uncomfortable with legislating for a specific situation which may never arise again and for which there are other means of addressing the problem. I don't honestly see any harm in this other than the precedent that it sets for addressing single situations legislatively. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Horniman.
Well, first of all, to the audience, and I believe Mr. Evans is still here, I just have to say that took some notes here as we were going along, and just throughout my working through this ordinance, and of course it was proposed by Mr. Traney and of course co-sponsored by myself, Ms. Gray Jackson, but first of all, I don't believe this ordinance, these changes to these ordinance is going to reduce or eliminate anyone's right to be presumed innocent until proven guilty or admission before the courts. And just want to state that, I'm not only an Army veteran, born and raised around the military and very strict constitutionalist, career law enforcement officer, and even on the Assembly, we take oaths, and I take my oath very seriously, and it's not just some words that I had to raise to swear to, but it's my life and my lifeblood. to uphold all the laws and defend the Constitution of the United States and of Alaska and this charter. That said, Mr. Flynn, I will say that I did have the privilege of attending the Public Safety Advisory Commission, and Captain Dave Cook of the Anchorage Police Department presented that in the last 3 years, in their review at APD, the question came up by the Peace Act, how many cases happen with cabs in this municipality? Now, there are, to be fair, there are more chauffeur licensed drivers that drive other than cabs, limousine, shuttle bus services, okay? But I believe, if I'm not correct, Mr. Fraser's there, but there's at least, I believe, somewhere around 800 chauffeur licensed drivers in this city. And in the last 3 years, we've had 4 arrests. 4 arrests. That's not investigations, that's not allegations, that's not incidents that happen and went unreported. And we know, not anecdotally, but we know that there are people who go to STAR or other agencies or tell friends, much like a cab driver that testified right here, that her cousin was sexually assaulted and molested in a cab over 20 years ago and never told a soul. So 4 cases in 3 years, one of which was later dismissed, admittedly, 2 of which netted convictions, and 1 which is pending, which is the case that we got right now at this time. In fact, I found of interest that during this brouhaha about this driver, that this particular law may have been as a result of trying to make action to find that we had a crack, I believe, in the cases. But right within a week or so after this bail review that puts him back in jail, there's the conviction of entry and the resulting fine or sentence for that cab driver. And I believe, in my heart of hearts, I'm sitting right here today, and I see and notice several people who are cab drivers and chauffeurs, permanent drivers. I think it's an honorable profession. I think it's a good profession. And I think most of these folks strive to be good at what they do. So I'm not slighting the industry or the profession in any way, shape, or form. But I have to lean towards, in my responsibility as a lawmaker, making sure the laws we have in the books apply to namely, if anybody knows me, knows that I'm going to lean hard on public safety, and I will not apologize to that or for that. So I believe this is a very good and solid research-based ordinance change. I'd urge support. I believe this not only does no harm, I believe it goes one step further in trying the best we can to protect innocent children and our women, and to be fair, there are men who are sexually assaulted too. I nearly sat on the jury there. So to protect our public. And so I'd urge support. Thank you, Madam Chair.
There's no one else in queue. I'm going to pass the gavel, if I could. I wasn't going to speak. I really wasn't. Oh, Ms. Johnston. I'll stop.
I might have a naive question, but does the municipality have any liability in this ordinance as far as if a cab driver is suspended unduly?
Mr. Wheeler?
Through the chair, Ms. Johnston, if we have suspended somebody, quote-unquote, unduly, without proper due process, then yes, we would face some liability for that.
And you're confident in the S2 version that we've spelled out the process, that we might not have that worry?
Yes.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak?
Ms. Osiander.
Thank you. I was troubled by this. Well, first blush, I was positive, and then I got to thinking about it, and I was troubled, because depriving somebody of their right to make a living is problematic. I want to just share with you some of the things that have gone through my mind in the past week. Number one, I am somewhat concerns for Mr. Fraser when he's trying to make decisions. And so I think that the S2 with the language on the arrest strengthens this and makes it easier for me to vote yes. The other thing that I appreciate is there are situations where public safety demands that there are extra burdens put in place because a person is in a position of power over another person. I think about some of the language that has occurred in changes of state law regarding teachers. Just during my experience in government, that's happened. And I think, too, of all those taxi cab passes that we give for homeless kids, to get to their schools. And so that causes me to put this in a little bit different light. I think, too, it's my third concern, which isn't as strongly met, is the due process one. And that is, I appreciate the language in here that's a due process. I frankly am not quite sure if the Taxi Commission is the right entity. And considered talking to you or potentially doing an amendment so we have a hearing officer who has experience weighing points of fact. My sense is that the Taxi Cab Commission does not have that experience and has not dealt with points of law or fact. But I think it may be a bit premature to second guess what the right solution is with that. So I do have some concerns, and actually I wish there were a little more time to incorporate some of Representative Grunberg's comments, because I think that might add to it. But I will be a yes vote, even though those concerns were lingering. So, thank you. You still have the gavel, sir. Mr. Trainey's next.
Mr. Trainey.
Thank you, Debbie, for your concerns on this. I know you have concerns with these issues like this and others we've dealt with over the years come in front of us, and that's responsible being elected to represent your constituents. I appreciate that. But I think we put a lot of time into this. I think the S2 version meets the needs, at least in talking to ACLU. They agreed to it, and believe me, they're not an easy pushover. If they didn't think there was due process provisions in this, they wouldn't have agreed to it. So I would just urge the body to vote for this. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Trainey. Mr. Trombley.
There's two things. The first would be, one thing that really struck me at the last assembly meeting was the lady that came forward, and she called the cops, and her client, customer, who didn't want to pay, ripped off all of her clothes, started hitting herself, and accused the cab driver of sexual assault. Unfortunately, the cab driver was a female and wasn't able to do exactly what she said that the cab driver did. And so those situations, although rare, do concern me. And this ordinance, if passed, would affect that individual. If she was a male, she would have had her license taken away. However, my biggest concern, there's a concern of a lot of people in the audience, of the constitutionality of something like this. And it seems to me, with the Second Circuit Court of Appeals saying, yes, it is constitutional, to me, the courts have weighed in on it. They've said it's constitutional. It doesn't violate constitutional rights. And so, therefore, I will be a yes, although I do agree with Mr. Flynn. I'm not sure how much it's actually going to do, considering the amount that the amount of situations like we saw last month or 2 months ago.
Seeing no, Ms. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one brief comment. I really appreciate the fact that my colleague, Mr. Trombley, consulted with Representative Gruenberg, and I didn't take any notes, but I really appreciate all of your comments. They just truly make sense to me, and I would like to see them incorporated. With that said, I know that the sponsor and the other sponsor of this ordinance would really like to see it passed this evening. So I'd like to say that although we probably are going to pass it this evening, I would like to request that our attorney look into your comments, Mr. Gruenberg, and we come back with another ordinance to incorporate those changes into this law. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Seeing no one else in the queue, would you please vote? That passes 10-1.
Thank you very much. And thanks to the Public Safety Commission and the Public Safety Advisory Commission for your work on that. The next item before us is 14A. This is AR 205. It's a resolution naming the lower level lobby of the Egan Civic and Convention Center in honor of Red Boucher. If anybody would like to speak to us on this matter, please come forward. Hearing and seeing no one, the public hearing is closed.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Mr. Mayor?
Yes, thank you. I'm pleased to see this going forward. Red Boucher was a personal friend and a truly, truly great Alaskan. You just really cannot express enough complimentary words about what he meant. Everything from starting the gold panners to at an advanced stage, he jumped into technology more than just about any person, past the age of 60 that I ever saw, and he just was an inspiration to everybody that worked with him or had the opportunity to be an acquaintance. So, a fitting tribute.
Mr. Trainee?
Red was a friend of mine and a constituent. I think this is great, and hopefully, Mr. Mayor, we'll find something relating to baseball to name after him. I know we don't normally name a couple things after a person, but if you could find something at a ball field somewhere to name after Red, I'd appreciate it, sir. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Honeman?
As a young man, I actually ran against Red Boucher once for mayor back in 1986-87, so found Red to be a very honorable, respectful gentleman, and I urge total support for this. Thank you.
Thank you. Please vote. That item passes unanimously. The next item before us is 14B, AO89, an ordinance amending the zoning map and providing for the rezoning of approximately 4.15 acres.
Waive reading.
Well, basically, this is a rezone for Penland Park Subdivision Tract D1. If you'd like to speak to this matter, please come forward.
Madam Chair, members of the Assembly, my name is Tim Potter, for the record, with Dell HKN. With me tonight in the audience is Mark Feynman with Cook Inlet Housing Authority, representing the owner of the property. I'll basically say that this is a housekeeping matter, in my opinion. The municipality of Anchorage, through their planning department, contacted Cook Inlet Housing Authority, the owners of the property, and indicated that the current D2 zoning district, which is a very little used, outdated zoning district, was going to be written out of Title 21 in the code rewrite. And that they suggested to Cook Inlet Housing that the appropriate zoning after the fact would be either R3 or RO, residential office. Cook Inlet Housing took that information and talked amongst themselves and said that they wanted to go forward with the RO zoning. We met with the Airport Heights Community Council in March and May. In May, resulted in a supportive vote in favor of the rezone to RO, with two suggested items for consideration of special limitations: a building height limitation and a transition buffering to the east, which is residentially developed property. Had no problem with that, and those were very acceptable special limitations. We did go forward to the Planning and Zoning Commission, where the ROSL was approved, and we come before you now requesting your support and approval of this ROSL. It's approximately 4.15 acres at the northeast corner of Airport Heights and DeBar Road, directly east of the Alaska Regional Hospital facility. This is a good rezone of the property. Since the time that the initial application went in, the Alaska Blood Bank has gone under contract to acquire the property, and that is the proposed location for their new headquarters building since they've outgrown their facility on Lake Otis and Laurel. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
There appear to be none, sir. Anybody else like to speak to us on this matter? Hearing and seeing no one, public hearing is closed.
Move to approve.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, please vote. That item is approved unanimously. Lickety-split, Mr. Potter. Thank you. The next item before us is 14C, AO92. This is an ordinance of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly amending Municipal Code Section 21.15.015 for clarification to confirm and maintain final...
Waive reading.
If you'd like to speak to us on this matter, this is about final site selection authority approval with the Assembly. Hearing and seeing no one, public hearing is closed.
Move to approve.
I'm going to, if you just mind, give this to Ms. Johnston since it's hers.
Absolutely, I will draw the motion.
All right. Ms. Johnston, do you want to make a motion? You were doing something else. You talked to me about this. I thought you had an intent to.
Sorry. I apologize. Yes, I'd like to move to postpone this indefinitely. I sent each of you an email suggesting that this will be addressed during the Title 21 process. Thank you.
Is there any objection to that from anyone?
No objection, but I did read the email, and I apologize. I didn't catch this one either, Ms. Johnson. Thank you.
All right. Well, with that, seeing no objection, this matter is postponed indefinitely. The next item before us is 14D. This is AO 93, an ordinance amending municipal codes. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah. Municipal, amending municipal code section 21.40.140 and related section. This is mixed-use development in B1A local and neighborhood business district. And there is a S version. If you'd like to speak to us on this matter, please come forward. Hearing and seeing no one, the public hearing is closed.
Move to approve.
Which one?
S version.
All right, the S version is before us. Mr. Hall, do you want to discuss it?
Just very briefly, this is an opportunity for mixed development, mixed-use on properties. This is one of these projects would be in my district. Community councils weighed in. They're very much in favor of this and support it. We've worked very closely with planning in drafting this, and I would urge support.
Seeing no one else in queue, please vote. That item is approved unanimously. The next item before us is 14E, AO94. It's an ordinance repealing Anchorage Municipal Code Section 23.45.41.3 regarding false alarms and emergency forces notification accompanied by AM 478. Anyone like to speak to us on this matter? Hearing and seeing no one, the public hearing is closed. Mr. Trainee made the motion. Ms. Johnston seconded it. Ms. Johnston, you're first in queue here. Did you want to speak to this?
Yes, I just wanted to ask the chief a question.
And the chief is coming forward.
Yes, ma'am.
I think I sent you an email from a constituent that had a number of false alarms and ended up having a large bill from the city. Will this take care of that problem? He was fixing his system, and the company that was fixing it was having problems fixing it, and finally they got it fixed.
I don't specifically, through the chair, sorry, I don't specifically think it'll fix that particular problem. This is basically cleaning up some code. We have conflicting information in Title 8. That's where all the fines and fees are. And 23.45.403 references the fire code, and we just want to take it out of there and put it all under fines and fees.
Okay, thank you. Actually, now that I think about it, it's the Chief Muir who yes, thank you.
This has got not much to do with that.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Johnson, I'm also working a little on that, so maybe we talk later. Thank you, sir. Is there any further discussion from anyone? Hearing and seeing no further discussion, please vote. That item passes unanimously. The next item before us is 14F, AR 241. This is a resolution.
Waive reading.
Okay, basically to authorizing the defeasance of a portion of lease revenue refunding bonds. Anybody like to speak to us on this matter, please come forward. Hearing and seeing no one, the public hearing is closed.
Move to approve.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, please vote. And that passes unanimously. The next item before us is 14G. This is AR 242. It's a resolution authorizing the disposal of a subsurface petroleum pipeline alley easement to Chevron USA. If you'd like to speak to us on this matter, please come forward. Hearing and seeing no one, public hearing is closed.
Move to second.
Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, please vote.
Trying to get done.
And that matter passes unanimously. The next item before us is 14H. Folks, I realize we're having fun, but let's try to get it done. Okay. 14H, AR 243. This is a resolution appropriating $222,663 from the U.S. Department of Justice, basically to continue the Alaska Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. If anybody would like to speak to us, please come forward. Hearing and seeing no one, public hearing is closed.
Move to approve.
Second.
Mr. Starr.
Chief, are we buying a bunch of computers as well? Is that why there's $100,000 worth of operating supplies? I should have asked the question earlier, but it came to me as to the appropriation directs $100,000 as something, and I don't know what it is.
I hate to make assumptions, but I guess I will. The grant, we share the grant with, we administer the grant for all the participating agencies, so there could be equipment purchase in there. There have been in the past. It's not always for APD, though. We might sub-grant it out and provide it to troopers or other participating agencies.
I understand. Perhaps you could follow up in an email to me. It sort of shows that disbursement. I'm happy to take the money for this purpose, the crimes against children on the Internet, but I'd also like to be effective in that appropriation. So
I'll find out for you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Honeman?
Just wanted to urge approval of this. I don't know if you guys have been noticing, but we even recently, as this past week, we had a pretty notable incidents involving Internet crimes. And the ICAC this is a regional and nationwide effort, actually going worldwide, but nationally this is a great program, and I'm just glad to see the Department of Justice still has funds to administer, and it's just so important to get the machines that they use to actually conduct these investigations. They're fairly highly technical, and I don't even profess to know how they do it, but it's amazing to watch from the outside periphery. I'd urge support.
Mr. Starr?
Well, I don't want to overshadow the Chief's, request back to us. So, Mr. Honeman, if you had experience, I guess the inference was that we were buying labor and the task force supplies, and there's a line on here for computers that says less than $1,000 of computer hardware, and then there's $100,000 worth of operating somethings.
Right.
And I just would like to know what that is.
No, I agree.
I agree with the support and all the other things, but if it's, things that should be more directed towards the labor and the task force, that maybe we should be diligent in that.
Yeah. Well, I agree with Mr.
Good.
Seeing no one else in queue, please vote. And that item passes unanimously. The next item before us is 14I, AR 244. This is a resolution appropriating $889,607 from the state, and I think I have to read the figure, $27,686 from general operating budget for the Anchorage Domestic Violence Prevention Program. Anyone like to speak to us on this? Hearing and seeing no one, public hearing is closed.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion? There is none. Please vote. That item is approved unanimously. We're now at 14J, AR 245. This is a resolution appropriating $230,758 from the state of Alaska pass-through grants to provide the Aging and Disability Resource Center services in the Department of Health. If you'd like to speak to us on this matter, please come forward. And seeing no one, public hearing is closed.
Move approval.
Second.
Seeing no discussion, please vote. That matter passes unanimously. The next item before us is 14K, AR 246, resolution appropriating $296,714 from U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and $86 as a contribution from the Department of Health and Human Services General Fund to the federal grants, and $215,505 from Alaska Housing Finance Corporation to the state direct federal pass-through grants to provide link project services through the Department of Health. Anybody who'd like to speak to us on this matter? Hearing and seeing no one, public hearing is closed.
Move to approve.
Second.
Do what?
And seeing no discussion, please vote.
Oh, Kim, was he here?
That item passes unanimously. We're now at 14L. This is AR 247. It's a resolution appropriating a Federal Health and Human Services Grant Award through State of Alaska Department of Health and Human and Social Services in the amount of $572,250.
Waive reading.
This is for the Coordinated Senior Transportation Services. Anyone like to speak to us on this matter? Hearing and seeing no one, public hearing is closed.
Move to approve.
Second.
Mr. Starr.
I wasn't able to get my question, but Ms. Engel, does this help us with our, I guess we're calling it the hybrid system out there with the Anchor Rides calling program for Chugiak Eagle River area, where those little express buses are?
Through the chair, Mr. Starr, this is a transit issue. The money goes to transit and is administered by them, so I wouldn't be able to speak on their behalf.
Yeah. Do you have any dispatch or dispersion of the coupons or that through your agency, though?
I'm not aware of that. That doesn't mean that doesn't happen.
Okay.
Sorry, I can't
That's
be of
all.
more help.
I just thought that you may see that in the needs care group for your client base.
We do have some money put aside in this action plan that will come before you on the 11th that will allow for some dispersion of vouchers to seniors and disabled riders.
Thank you very much.
All right. Seeing no further discussion, please vote. That item passes unanimously. That concludes our agenda business. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak to us on any other matter? There appear to be none. Are there any assembly comments? There appear to be none. A motion would be in order.
Move to approve.
Move to adjourn.
You're in a rhythm there, Mr. Honeman. We are adjourned.